Hello everyone and welcome to Pacific Rim Theory, a place to discuss theories, lore, news and just all things Pacific Rim. Today I want to start off the channel really by discussing the Pacific Rim sequel, specifically the version that Guillermo del Toro originally planned to make. From cast interviews and interviews with the director, we can piece together what Guillermo initially planned to happen in the Pacific Rim sequel. So without further ado, let's get started. To start off, we need to understand why Guillermo didn't direct the sequel in the first place. And this all comes down to timing issues, as Guillermo was working on his new project, Shape of Water. With Guillermo busy filming his new project, the reins were handed over to Steven DeKnight, who is also known for directing Daredevil and the Spartacus TV show. But despite the change in directors, we can still find information that shows what Guillermo del Toro's original plans for the Pacific Rim sequel were. In June 2014, Guillermo announced to BuzzFeed that Raleigh, Mako, Newt, Gottlieb, and even Hannibal Chow would be in Pacific Rim 2. He states that he'd be taking them into fresh territory that will display amazing sights and battles. From this already, we can get a couple of major differences from Uprising. Raleigh is not only present in the film, but Mako is also a prominent character. And Hannibal Chow makes a return. Like, oh, come on, Hannibal Chow. We gotta have Hannibal Chow in the sequel. You can't not have Hannibal Chow in the sequel. But what makes me more excited is knowing that he wanted Maisie Williams, the Game of Thrones actor who played Arya Stark, to be in the sequel. From this tweet, I believe he wanted her to be a ranger, which would have been so cool to see. Guillermo did plan to introduce young cadets into the franchise through the animated series he was working on called Pacific Rim Steel Warriors, a prequel to the first film. He also mentioned that some of the characters in that show would appear in the second film. Maybe Maisie's character would have been one of those cadets that we saw in the sequel, and honestly that would have been so cool to see. I would have loved to see Guillermo's vision for the cadets. We did see Uprising's version, but I want to know what Guillermo had in mind for cadet pilots. That would be very interesting to see. In regards to character arcs though, we know from an interview that Charlie Day had with Screen Rant that Newt originally was meant to become a villain in the second film, like he was in Uprising. But Guillermo apparently changed his mind about this because of the way his character resonated with the audience, and honestly, I didn't like Newt as a villain. I think Newt is better as a hero. He doesn't seem like the type of person to be a villain, and I didn't really like him going that way in Uprising. I don't know if I'm the only one on that. Let me know what your view on Newt being a villain in Uprising was in the comments. Another thing that's exciting to know is that alongside the return of Gypsy Danger, which would have been a kaiju/Jaeger merged machine, which is absolutely insane, we'd also be seeing new Jaegers, namely ones that be from China, Russia and Korea. Here we can see concept art for the Korean Jaeger, and you can see the flag's colors have been incorporated into the design. It also has a sleeker look than the more heavier, bulkier Jaegers we saw in the first film. Another concept art I found was one of a new Chinese Jaeger that was meant to be in the sequel called Saber Athena, which is such a badass name. Again, this Jaeger has a sleeker design, but what I love more is how it looks like an angel with the metal wings attached to its back. But what I'm curious about is the concept art for the Jaeger called Gangster Bot Loco, which I'm not gonna lie is a weird and funny name. But what's odd about its design is that it doesn't seem to represent any country or nation. It looks like a rogue Jaeger that someone would have made outside of the PPDC for their own uses. Maybe Hannibal Chow created it. Wouldn't it be far off? I guess, would it? I mean, who knows what he's capable of? From this concept art, we can guess that it would have been an enemy of Gypsy Danger, further reinforcing my idea that it could have been a rogue Jaeger. But what do you think about Gangster Bot Loco? Jesus, that's just a weird name. Let me know about your ideas of this Jaeger in the comments. The final Jaeger we know about is Black Maria, which is a Mexican Jaeger that was piloted by two ex-cons. In a press conference with Legendary Pictures, Guillermo said, "We had a Mexican Jaeger with two ex-convicts that got a deal. They told them, if you drive a Jaeger one more time, we'll give you freedom." In an interview with GQ, Steven DeKnight said that in later iterations of the script, Black Maria was meant to be a bad Jaeger and was piloted by two sisters who were assassins, which is such a twist to the Jaeger pilots that we've seen so far. That would have been totally insane. I don't know if they'd be like, I don't know, assassinating the other pilots. who sent them. You know, there's all these questions that arise from just those ideas alone. But speaking at a film festival, Guillermo said that Black Maria would have been in the sequel. So that would have definitely been something that we would have been allowed to see, and that would have been very interesting, honestly. From an interview Guillermo had with Collider, we know that the sequel would have taken place a few years after the first film, in a world that was free from the kaiju. Guillermo raises the question of what would happen to Jaeger technology with the kaiju no longer being a threat, which is such an interesting plot point. What would have happened to Mako and Wally? Without the kaiju, what would they have been doing? These are questions I would have loved to see explored in the sequel, because that would have really been interesting to see. Especially Mako, we see her have such a jump from being the Jaeger pilot to now being one of the higher ups in the PBDC, so I want to know how she got there. In an interview with Paul Osterberry, the production designer that Guillermo was working with on Pacific Rim 2, he explained some of the locations that they planned to film at. We had some scenes in Shanghai, and we were using the river and the craziness of Shanghai as our backdrop. It was sort of a wall at the end of the river. And then we were in the desert, because there were scenes in the desert, and we went way into the desert, into some amazing landscapes to use as part of our background. And then of course, I think we finished in the West Coast. I think it was San Francisco that we were going to end up in. San Francisco, where so many disaster movies take place. We were going to destroy it with the great big battle between kaiju and big robots. So that was going to be pretty exciting. To have seen the craziness of Shanghai and then returning to San Francisco, where Trespasser, the first kaiju attacked, would have been so great to see. But I really want to know why they were in the desert. Like, was a breach there? Were there like remains of a destroyed Jaeger? Like, just thinking about all the possibilities makes me excited to know. I want to know. Guillermo, let us know, please. But yeah, that's all I can find out about Guillermo's original plans for the sequel. It's pretty short though, isn't it? I tried to do as much research as I can. But if you would have loved to see his version of Pacific Rim 2, let me know in the comments and let me know what your ideas for a sequel would have been as well. And make sure to subscribe for more Pacific Rim content like this, and follow me on Twitter too. I love talking about Pacific Rim over there as well. So yeah, please support and see you next time.